Former President Donald Trump said that Monday he is suing ABC News and news anchor George Stephanopoulos for defamation over the newsman's questioning on March 10th of Representative Nancy Mace, a Republican from South Carolina, for her support of Trump's run for president in 2024. Nancy Mace is a rape victim who has spoken out about her experience. Now, Trump was found by a New York jury liable for sexual abuse and defamation in the case against him by E. Jean Carroll. Stephanopoulos, however, said that Trump was found liable for rape, which is a different thing under New York law. Let's listen to the exchange that stirred up this incident.
Rape.
They are judged and they're shamed. You're trying to shame me this morning. I think it's disgusting.
I'm not shaming you at all.
I told my story. It took me 25 years to tell my story. I was judged for it. I still get judged for it today.
I'm asking you a very simple question.
And I answered it. You're shaming me for my political choices.
I'm asking you a question about why you endorse someone who's been found liable for rape.
It was not a criminal court.
So it's interesting that even in that exchange, Mace's response wasn't that, no, Donald Trump didn't rape anybody. It was that it wasn't in criminal court, which is true. It was a civil case. Now, there's actually a article that kind of goes through this in the New York Times, or in the Washington Post, rather, that is titled, Judge Clarifies, Yes, Judge was found to have raped, yes, Trump was found to have raped E.G. Carroll, where the judge talks about how because there is a narrow definition of what rape is in New York State that does not include digital penetration, the jury did come to a finding that he had sexually assaulted but not raped. But it went on to say, quote, the finding that Ms. Carroll failed to prove that she was raped within the meaning of the New York penal law does not mean that she failed to prove that Mr. Trump raped her, as many people commonly understand the word rape. Indeed, as the evidence at trial recounted below makes clear, the jury found that Mr. Trump, in fact, did exactly that. So when you have the judge in the case saying that by common definition of what we understand rape to include, including digital penetration, it does seem odd to me that there would ever be a successful lawsuit against someone like George Stephanopoulos, who is speaking not in making a legal case in court, but in the common understanding of the meaning of the word rape about actions that Trump took, and which was proven, a jury of his peers found that he actually did in a civil trial, find that to be defamatory.
Yeah, so New York has an unusually narrow definition for rape to being just penetration, penis, vagina, and this has been changed since the E. Jean Carroll lawsuit to now encompass other forms of digital penetration, etc. So, yeah, the judge explained that what was meant by what they were found, it would be considered rape in common modern parlance. So I similarly don't give this lawsuit a lot of hope. Also, the bar that Trump has to meet is very high because he is a public figure. Yeah. So then the actual malice standard comes in. So, if Stephanopoulos was just offhandedly saying that, but was like, I meant sexual abuse. Yeah. That's not, it has to be that he absolutely knew and he did it with intentionality or reckless disregard for the truth. That kind of, you have to have some evidence to demonstrate that. Was there notes somewhere where they're going over productions for the show where he says, I know it's not rape, but I'm going, technically, but I'm going to say that anyway because I hate him, that sort of thing.
Also, we're saying it's defamation. So the Washington Post has an article saying, headlined, Trump raped E.G. Carroll. But is defamation for a journalist to say Trump raped E.G. Carroll? I mean, this is like it's.
Well, right. Well, the Washington Post headline is, Judge Clarifies, Yes, Trump was found to have raped E.G. Carroll. So that is attributed to the judge. So he could sue
did the judge defame Donald Trump?
If Donald Trump thinks that that's defamatory, he would have to sue the judge, not the Washington Post for just repeating it.
I mean, some of the interesting background here is that, of course, there was an $83 million judgment in that particular case. And overall, Trump is facing this $500 million bond that he has to put up. And he, frankly, cannot afford it. He's struggling. I think he has about 6 days left to the 25th to secure this money. And as someone who really ran on emphasizing his business savvy and the wealth that accrued as a consequence of said business savvy, it is putting him in a really interesting situation optically, where this man who claimed to be a multi-billionaire and all of these kinds of things can come up with $500 million to post bond in these judgments.
Yeah. I will say people should strive for greatest accuracy, including journalists, so it would be better to use the technical term of what he was convicted under, sexual abuse and defamation, instead of rape. I used to write about sexual misconduct proceedings and hearings on college campuses a lot, and I remember when I was a much younger journalist, rape, frankly, is a shorter word to put in a headline when sexual abuse or sexual misconduct was the technical definition. And multiple times I had people involved that reach out to me and say, that's not really accurate, and that reflects less well on me, and you should change that. And I became a better journalist, a more responsible journalist, as understanding the differences between those things. And it is, just to save yourself some convenience or a shorter word or whatever, is not, the way to practice journalism. So I do take the point that the actual thing is what should be used.
To be clear, though, the conversation between Nancy Mace and George Stephanopoulos was about whether or not she, as someone who describes herself as a rape survivor, specifically using that word, is being in some way hypocritical or in some other ways kind of ideologically inconsistent to be supportive of someone like Donald Trump, who has just been found liable of something similar. I don't know if you want to call it the same, but something similar in this civil proceeding. And so it also does feel a little like you're having a conversation. You're talking about one, in a very sensitive circumstance, one party's experiences with sexual assault, specifically rape, and saying, well, if you've been through this, why would you support someone else who's done it, right? That's the parallel that's trying to be drawn here. And so you can see why there's a temptation to say, you've been raped, he's raped, why are you unwilling to hold him to the same standard that I would presume that you would hold your abuser to?
I mean, I guess her position, I think, is she has some doubt, or she's at least I don't know what she thinks privately or publicly, but that was not the final word on the answer. It was a civil trial. When she says it's a civil trial, it's a 51%, not overwhelming evidence. She doesn't believe it or doesn't think there is enough evidence to disqualify her from her support. Obviously, the fact, Joe Biden, as we've discussed multiple times on the show. In fact, we've interviewed at great length an accuser of Joe Biden's who accused him of sexual misconduct, sexual abuse.
A very similar type of digital penetration as well.
And obviously, people, you could put every person who is voting for Biden in that same interview and ask, well, why do you support Joe Biden?
I agree.
He's had these accusations against him. Now, I think it is. I don't think it's. In fact, I was seeing on, and it's funny we're talking about all these things again, I was seeing on social media that Christine Blasey Ford was interviewed on The View either today or yesterday, again, being described as a very credible person. And I think who gets described, without wanting to, I don't want to express malice or a lack of support to any of these people. I think, it is difficult to come forward and tell your story. And we have, thankfully, as a society, made it easier for people to share them. At the same time, I think it is, frankly, difficult to adjudicate in the public eye and decide how much credence to give even very plausible sounding things that happened a long time ago and have, some level of support in terms of, well, I heard it at the time too, but don't have, that sort of very compelling evidence that would allow us to make up our mind dispositively. And I say that, again, for many of these cases that go in either direction, and it's very difficult without wanting to, besmirch anyone saying anything specifically.
Yeah, I frankly think that there's something somewhat untoward about the line of questioning from George Stephanopoulos. There are a lot of people who have to make hard decisions about who they vote for and support because most candidates are not completely ideologically aligned with everything that we'd want. And I think your point about, well, is Christine Blasey Ford ever going to be asked about her willingness to vote? Presumably, I don't know who she's voting for, but as it seems to be a Democrat, seems to be in all likelihood voting for Joe Biden, given what he's been accused of. And frankly, tragically, given the ubiquity of sexual assault, especially at various points in American history and the power dynamics that have existed between men and women, there are, it would be hard pressed in many instances to find a race that hadn't been marred by those kinds of accusations, and credible ones at that. I mean, people often joke in the Black community, oh, you're expecting me to vote for a candidate that's not racist? Well, if someone said something racist, line them up. You're picking between lessers of two evils in a lot of respects, depending on what your own experiences have been in the world and what your priorities are. And it is a little bit of nasty work to call out, I think, because she's a Republican, Nancy Mace for her support of Donald Trump in a way that I wouldn't predict that he would do for a Democrat in light of another Democratic person who's been credibly accused of rape. That being said, I don't think that Donald Trump has much of a case here. Yeah. He can kind of wail and kvetch, but I think at the end of the day, this is a distraction from his much bigger financial woes.
Stay tuned for more updates on that, and we'll be back with more Rising right after this.